If you have recently come to the realization that you are spending way too much money on chicken feed, whether for your layers or your broilers, then stick around, because this system that we're talking about today completely eliminates the need for a ton of store-bought feed. Like right now, I'm still supplementing some fermented cracked corn, but that's just because I don't have all of my compost piles squared away yet. Once I get all these compost piles squared away, then I can basically, the combination of the bacteria from the compost, plus any food scraps that we have from the kitchen, plus any future garden waste is going to go to this system, and it's going to completely eliminate the need for store-bought chicken feed. Now, this is the third week of this system, so I only have 2 compost piles. This one right here, which is the first ever compost pile made with this system. And then this one is the second one, which is still in the cage. Now, also remember, if you have any questions regarding this system, leave them down below in the comment section. I'm going to be doing a permaculture Q&A dedicated to just the chicken tractor on steroids. So you're probably remembering a time where I said, try to flip all of your compost piles while your chickens are still inside the coop. Well, I'm doing this later in the afternoon so I could avoid the majority of the rainfall. So I couldn't leave the chickens in the coop for that long. So here we are, flipping compost with the chickens out. And it's gonna be a little bit more annoying here in a minute once I start flipping this compost pile. Because I'm getting access to the center of the compost pile, which, you know, they don't typically have access to. So they're gonna go a little bit crazy. They're gonna be in the way, but that's okay. It just makes it a little bit more annoying. Oh, also, when you're doing the chicken tractor on steroids, each week you're gonna flip your oldest compost pile first. So this is the very first pile that we made here. So this is going to get flipped first, which is going to make space for the compost pile we just made. And yeah, so you gotta make space for the compost you're gonna flip. That's why you flip your oldest piles first. And I'm literally just gonna flip it right over here. I'm not gonna do anything pretty. I'm not trying to shape it in any particular way. The only thing I'm gonna do is make sure the stuff that gets scratched out around the sides, that I just raked up, I'm gonna put that down so that way it can have full contact with the compost pile without it getting scratched out and dried out and stuff like that. That's the only kind of pattern or technique I'm using. And now we're gonna pop open this compost pile. See if we see any color change or steam or anything like that. Probably won't see too much steam, but here we go. We might see some color change now. There's change in material for sure. The color of the material has changed, as you can see here in the center. I'll show you guys a close-up here in a second. So here's the compost pile right here, and you can see this white stuff. In fact, you can kind of see it better in person than you can on camera. But you see that, shut up, dude. Still need rooster names, by the way. But you see the white stuff here in this compost pile and this material. That is actinobacteria, which is a facultative. You can actually see it a little bit better now. But those white puffs, those white sections of the compost is actually actinobacteria, which is a facultative anaerobe. So facultative meaning like it's halfway between aerobic and anaerobic. So the conditions in the center of this either got super hot or they got really wet. And I'm gonna guess probably a combination of both, which is fine because the super high nitrogen additive from these guys right here, these chickens, is going to make it heat up in the center. I'm not concerned about it. Don't worry about it if it's in your compost pile. It's going to disappear as it progresses through the line. So that's just a good sign that your compost pile has heated up and or you have plenty of moisture in there. I will be at the 5-day Sustain Me event. That's the Barbara O'Neill event. I'm gonna be there. Jonathan Otto is going to be there. Mom and Dad from Permaculture Farm is gonna be there. Mike the Fit Farmer is gonna be there. Jax is gonna be there. And of course, Barbara O'Neill is gonna be there. Can't wait to see you guys. I'm excited about the event. I know my wife is super excited about it. During COVID, I remember she was watching Barbara O'Neill stuff all the time. So if you want to come see Barbara O'Neill, if you want to see what she's got to say, if you want to hear the information that she's giving without YouTube banning it in less than 24 hours, then check out the event. Everything is linked down below. That one's going to be mid-March up in North Carolina. Now, also, I'm going to be at the Midwest Preparedness Conference in Kansas, which is actually where I grew up. Most of my childhood was spent in Kansas. I'll be teaching there. I'll be doing a full gambit of classes. I'm going to be teaching compost. I'm going to be doing a review over the disaster relief efforts in Hurricane Helene up in North Carolina and stuff. And I'm also going to be processing a goat or a sheep or something. All I know is that they're going to bring me an animal, we're going to kill it, we're going to cut it up, we're going to eat it, and we're going to be happy about it. So all that's going to happen, as well as Joel Salatin's going to be there. So yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait to see you guys there. That's a whole week long, and here's the kicker. Admission is free. You can go there for free. You can go there and then learn these skills for free. Some of these skills that are being taught for free are easily classes that would be paid like, I don't know, what, like $500 for some of these classes. We're going to be doing a hands-on composting class, which has only ever been done a few times before. This composting class that I'm going to be teaching is like, it's foolproof. You can't mess it up. We're going to be learning all of that at the Midwest Preparedness Conference. It's linked down below. Can't wait to see you guys there. I believe I'm speaking right before Joel Salatin. Can't wait to see him there. So hopefully you guys notice after flipping a compost pile that the chickens seem to have a renewed interest in this compost pile. And it's because you've given them access to parts of this compost pile that they did not have access to before. And they're just going to go through and see what bacteria they can pop up and eat. So now that this compost pile is flipped, we're going to go ahead and remove the cage and flip that compost pile. And then before we make the next one, we'll move everything back that way and give ourselves more space. And with the cage, just remove the boards and anything that's going to be in your way. And then this cage just slides up over this compost. You just pull it up on either side. It's not something that I disassemble and then reassemble every time. I just slide it right out, and then I put it off to the side, and that'll be used to make the next compost pile. Now, before I start flipping this one, I'm actually going to move this chicken tractor back. So that's where it is now. It used to be like right over this concrete pad. Just moved it back, made it a little bit easier, and gave me a little more room going that way. You actually might be able to see the steam coming off of it right now. And this has just been sitting here. This is the newest pile, the 1 week pile. All right, so we got both piles flipped, and hopefully you can see just from right here, you can see the color difference between the two. That one's considerably darker, that one's older, that one's been aging longer. This one, it would just flipped out of the cage. So this one has been around for 1 solid week. That one has been around for 2 solid weeks, going on 3. And then, but we'll call this 2nd week pile because it's working on its 2nd week. We'll call that third week pile because it's working on its 3rd week. And we're about to create the 1st week pile right over here. And we create the 1st week pile by taking all of the bedding, which consists of 1 whole bale of hay. We take all that old bedding and we put it in this cage right here. And then every day we feed the chickens on top of this cage. And at the end of every day, so any food that we give them, any chicken scraps, any like chicken scraps meaning like food scraps that go to the chickens, any store-bought feed if you're still using that, anything like that goes in, gets fed on top of this compost cage right here. And then at the end of every day, you're going to cover it up with a little bit of carbon. Just enough to like cover up the food, just get that layer going between the nitrogen food and the carbon addition that you're adding. And you're gonna do that every single day. You want them to eat out of here. Anything they don't eat gets turned into compost. And while they're eating, they're also pooping at the same time. So they're adding more nitrogen to your compost cage right here. And it doesn't really matter what size your compost cage is, as long as the volume of it is at least 1 cubic yard. I like to go a little bit over 1 cubic yard, so that way, like if I don't quite fill it up all the way, I know I'm still good because of that extra space that I have in there. With this particular coop, I just take the front face off, and then I'll lift up the roost so that way I can get access to all of this bedding. And then from here, I'll pull all this bedding out and put it in this cage right here. Now, you have a bunch of different options on your bedding. You don't have to use, that rooster just tried to sneak up on me again. So you can use hay like I am right here. Just go based on whatever's cheapest for you. Like hay is a pretty cheap option for me here in this part of Texas. Straw, believe it or not, is a little bit more expensive. So I use hay instead of the straw. And if you're worried about the weed seeds or anything like that, don't be, because the chickens, as they go, well, it's bedding first. And as they go through this, they're going to pick out a bunch of the weed seeds out of it this way. And then also the high temperatures of the compost cage is going to kill the remaining weed seeds. So you don't have to worry about weed transfer or seed transfer or anything like that. It is pretty doggone low. Really, the only weeds you have to worry about, or the seeds you have to worry about, are the ones that blow into the compost cage after it's already been made and cured and all that fun stuff. But you can use any source of carbon you have. Like, let's say you have a bunch of bamboo and stuff like that. You can totally use bamboo leaves as your source of carbon, or just like even regular leaves. You can use like leaves that fall from like deciduous trees every year. You could use, for example, this hemp bedding. Just make sure it's safe for the chickens, whatever you're going to use. I try not to use pine shavings unless I'm intentionally making a fortified mulch. If I'm looking for like finished garden compost, then I'll use some like smaller, easier to break down carbon sources. But wood chips are perfect if you're trying to make like fortified mulch for your food forest, for your orchard, or for any kind of fruit trees, stuff like that. So if your material is too high above your compost cage, you can always come through and kind of squish it down, stomp it down, and stuff like that. And it won't cause any harm, because the first time you flip it, which is going to be in about a week, all of this is going to get fluffed up anyway. So you're really just still collecting materials at this point. You're catching the manure from the chickens, you're catching any feed scraps that they don't eat, and you're turning it into compost. But look at those guys. I don't know if you guys can see them. They're getting to work on that compost. They're scratching that down pretty well. And then they're not messing with that third week compost pile too much. And this goes back to what I was talking about before. Their favorite compost piles are usually the second and third week compost piles. And then they'll take preference over what is in the compost cage you see right here. And then they might mess with the fourth week pile. But the majority of their work is done on that second and third week compost pile. I think it's because of the amount of bacteria that's in that compost pile. It's really kicking, it's really heating up, it's really active, and they're able to see the bacteria easily and get what they want for food. All right, so while that cage is still being soaked with water, I'm gonna do a couple of different things. I'm gonna fill up the bottom of this chicken coop with this hemp bedding. I was trying to use it for nesting boxes. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think the chickens are a big fan of it either. Ow. That sucked. Anyway, what I was saying is that I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think the chickens are a big fan of it either, because they went from using the nesting boxes to no longer using the nesting boxes. So I wonder if it messes with them in any kind of way, or if they're just not a big fan of it. And if they don't like it, then I don't like it. So it's gonna get composted, or it's gonna eventually get composted. It's gonna be animal bedding first, and then whatever else I need, I'll just go ahead and use the bale of hay that I have. I just make sure that I get every corner of this chicken coop covered in hay, because every time they poop, I want to catch that stuff and turn it into compost. And then from there, just lower the roost, presses that bedding down a little bit. And now I'll go ahead and get the door back on. So just in the amount of time it took me to flip this out and rebed it and all that type of stuff, look at how much the destruction the chickens have already done. They have already scratched the crap out of this pile for the most part, except for the very, very core. And then this pile over here, they largely haven't even touched. So yeah, there's a good little demonstration on which pile is their clear favorite. And now the only thing left to do is to give them their fermented scraps of was it cracked corn, and then also some food scraps in there. It's the last thing to do. And remember, when you feed them, you always feed them in the compost cage. So let me try to do that real quick. There we go. So just to reiterate, the bedding stays in this for a week, and then it flips out into this cage. Everything that was in this cage for a week flips out and becomes the second week pile. The second week pile flips and becomes the third week pile. The third week pile next week will flip and become the fourth week pile, and at that point you can either leave them access to the fourth week pile, or you can flip it out of the system. Depending on how broken down it is, I may or may not leave it. It all just kind of depends there. But look at these guys. This is where you feed them every single day. And at the end of this frenzy, like this evening, whenever they're all going back into the coop and they're clearly done eating from this section, then I'll take some of this hay right here and I'll just lightly scatter it over the top of whatever they didn't eat. That'll help layer the carbon with the nitrogen, but it'll also help limit the other, not predators, but scavengers that might come and try to eat from this compost cage. If you have any questions, remember to leave them down below in the comment section about this system, and I'll do a dedicated permaculture Q&A for this system. Can't wait to see you guys at the festivals I mentioned before. And if you need a permaculture consultation, if you want me to come to your house and give you an order of operations, like what to do and when to do it, then hit up the email down below. Even if you're out of town, I'll still travel to you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, we'll see you.